They said the bell would call the faithful to salvation, but the bell fell silent the night they vanished. No priest, no townsperson, no sound remained, only the shadow of something ancient waiting in the tower. The echoes of Saint Augustine are no longer for the living. This is the story of why the bell never rang again. The camera drifts slowly along the worn cobblestones of the town square, where shadows cling to the edges of the centuries-old buildings. The spire of Saint Augustine's church rises above them, stark against a grey sky, its silhouette fractured by the twisting of time and weather. Rain has left the stones slick, reflecting faint light from lanterns that sway with the wind. The bell tower has stood here for generations, stone stacked upon stone, weathered and silent now, but once it called the town together. Its toll marked every joy and sorrow, every feast and warning, every life measured in echoes. Villagers still speak of it in hushed tones. Old men remember its voice, soft at first, then rolling across the valley, a sound that drew everyone out of their homes, that gave rhythm to their days. They called it sacred, necessary, but the last ringing was different. Records kept in the church's archives hint at unease. Ledger entries, written in precise script, note irregularities. The bell tower's upkeep was meticulous, yet small subtle entries stand out. Clock mechanism halts at midnight, bells tone uneven, faint scratching from inside the chamber. No one mentions these in conversation. The entries are benign, but together they suggest something was off, something unseen, but tangible. The town itself seems almost frozen when recalling the bell. Children grew up under its call, yet even they remember the final night differently. One remembers the sound cutting off abruptly, leaving only a hollow thrum in the air. Another speaks of a shadow moving across the square when no one else was there. The bell tower looms over the town like a sentinel, but sentinels are meant to watch, not to warn. A local historian, bent with age, leafs through a leather-bound record book. His fingers tremble, the ink has faded, but the meaning is clear. Bells once tolled without interruption for decades, then almost without warning, the entries stop, and that's when he heard it. The historian pauses, not a toll, not a vibration of metal, but a low, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to resonate from the walls themselves. Outside, the town carries on. Children play, merchants shout, life moves in its usual rhythm. But in the tower something waits, or perhaps it had always waited. Villagers recall the last festival before the silence. The bell rang to announce the coming of harvest, as it always did. Farmers and townsfolk gathered, music played, candles flickered in the evening wind, but the bell's sound was uneven. A mother gripping her child's hand noticed it first. The toll was long, too long, pauses stretched between each swing, an irregular rhythm that made the chest tighten. Something about it was wrong. No one spoke of it at the time. They were proud of their church, of the bell. They didn't know how to name the feeling, that creeping discomfort that prickled the skin. Later, accounts in diaries hinted unease. Men mention headaches, a tightness in the chest, a sense that they were being watched even in crowded rooms. And the bell, its final toll was recorded as late in the evening, a single shivering note that stretched into silence. The town waited for the second toll, but it never came. Residents went to the tower. They climbed the worn steps, careful of splintered beams and crumbling stone. The chamber at the top was empty. The rope swung, still in the faint draft. The bell had not been struck, yet a sound lingered in the air. Not the bell, something else. A vibration beneath the skin. An apprentice bell ringer recalled the sensation years later. His voice shakes as he tells it. It felt like the tower itself was breathing, watching, waiting, and yet no one could find a cause. Mechanisms were intact. The bell was whole, the chamber clean. No footprints beyond the rope's reach. But something wasn't right. Even the oldest villagers, those who remembered every toll of the bell, felt it. A subtle distortion in the rhythm of their days. A missing beat that left them uneasy. In the archives alongside the faded ledgers, photographs show the tower in different seasons. Snow coats the spire in white silence. Summer sunlight burns against the stone, turning it golden. The bell is visible in each frame. Solid, imposing, yet its presence feels absent. A scholar who visited decades later described the feeling as uncanny, not fear, exactly, more like a hesitation, a sense that the bell was no longer part of the town's life, even as it dominated the skyline. And then there were whispers, stories told quietly in the corners of taverns, in hushed conversations as dusk fell, a bell ringer vanishing, strange sounds heard at night, shadows that stretched across walls in ways they shouldn't. And that's when he heard it, a single sound, like metal scraping stone, faint at first, then growing, a resonance that filled the narrow streets below. People looked up, searching the tower, but saw only its dark silhouette. The historian closes the ledger. His eyes are distant. He doesn't look at the tower, not directly, but the pull is there, always there. The town continues its routine, but unease lingers like fog. The bell's silence is not just absence, it is presence, a void that presses against memory and expectation. Some nights, the wind carries the faintest echo, not the bell, but a vibration that reminds the town something changed, something shifted, something remains in the tower that no one can name. The square is empty, lanterns flicker, shadows creep along the walls. The camera pans slowly upward. The tower looms, silent, waiting. The historian whispers one last note, almost to himself. It called once, and then it did not call again. And the town, beneath it, breathes, but differently now. Every shadow feels longer, every footstep echoes, every silence carries the weight of a bell that will never toll. The wind moves through the tower's broken stones. A faint hum vibrates in the air. Not a bell, something else, something waiting. The last villagers remember it, and that memory, stretched across generations, carries unease into the present, but they never speak of it aloud, not anymore, because the bell, it was gone, and so was the certainty it once brought. The camera rises slowly along the stone walls of Saint Augustine's bell tower. Moss clings to the mortar, the stones are slick from recent rain. Light filters through narrow windows, thin shafts of gold that barely reach the floor. Inside, the air is heavy. Dust rises in small clouds with each step. The smell of damp stone lingers. It is quiet, too quiet, for a place built to announce life and death. The bell ringers had begun to notice the first oddities. A rope that moved without hands. Shadows that flickered across walls though no candle had shifted. A chill that lingered in the air, despite the warmth of summer, but it was subtle at first, almost ignorable. A young apprentice, tasked with maintaining the ropes, remembers the sensation. I felt as if someone was above me, he says, years later, watching, waiting, but no one was there. The priest's journal corroborates this unease. In neat, looping handwriting, entries describe small disturbances, candles extinguished before their time, whispered sounds echoing through the empty stairwell. The bell chamber door sometimes creaked open, though it had been locked, and that's when he heard it. A low, almost imperceptible murmur that seemed to rise from the stone itself. Not a voice, not a bell, something else, something patient. The tower is not large, but the climb is narrow and winding. Each step groans under weight. Shadows stretch across walls. Light bends oddly around corners. Bell ringers report seeing movements in the corner of their eyes, dark forms that vanish when confronted. A rope swinging slightly, as though someone had pulled it and left immediately. The oldest bell ringer recalls the first night he truly understood that the tower was alive in its own way. A candle flickered near the belfry door. Shadows shifted behind it, in a pattern that suggested limbs, though he knew no one was there.
He froze, and then he noticed the windows. The town below was still, silent, watching from the distance. And yet, it was not the town that unnerved him. It was the height, the empty air, the suggestion that something beyond human was observing him from above. A faint wind stirred the papers in the chamber. The journal notes that night. The shadows linger longer than they should. The bell seems restless. Residents in the square below occasionally glance upward. They say the tower seems darker than the night around it. The stone absorbs light, even on clear days. It casts a shadow that feels too large for its shape. But the bell ringers must continue. Duty demands it. And so they climb the spiral staircase each day, hands gripping the worn railing. Heartbeats echo in the narrow shaft. Footsteps sound louder than they are. Sometimes one of them pauses, listens. A whisper drifts downward, indistinct, words or fragments of words, carried on a current that should not exist. And that's when he heard it. A faint scraping, against stone, metal, he cannot tell. The hairs on his neck rise, his palms sweat. He tightens his grip on the rope. The priest writes in his journal that night, "It watches, I feel it, though unseen. Perhaps it waits for the bell to call." The townsfolk do not notice. They do not climb the tower. They see only its form against the sky, its shadow across the square, its silence in the late afternoon sun. And yet, for those who ascend, the sensation is persistent. Eyes that do not exist, following each movement. A pressure that grows heavier with height. A bell ringer recalls the rope snapping once without provocation. He had felt no tension, no wind, just a sudden jolt. The bell did not swing, but the chamber trembled. Something wasn't right. The apprentice notes small footprints near the belfry door, tiny, precise, and then vanishing into the stone floor. Impossible, he says, and yet, undeniable. Shadows deepen in the corners of the chamber. Candlelight flickers, exaggerating forms into figures. Faces seem to peer from the walls, half-formed, dissolving when approached. The journal continues. "I am watched even in prayer. I feel it shift when I turn my back. Is it the bell, or something older?"
Hours stretch. Time becomes indistinct. The tower seems larger inside than outside. The stones themselves hum faintly, a resonance that sets teeth on edge. And then at the top of the spiral, the bell itself sits silent, still, but the air around it vibrates. A bell ringer stops mid-step, hand on the rope. The wind carries a sound downward, faint but deliberate, a whisper in cadence with the bell's imagined tolls. No one else is there, but he feels the weight of attention, something above, waiting, something patient. The priest's journal ends that night with a single line, uncharacteristically terse: "Do not climb." It watches. The bell ringers continue. They must, but each climb is heavier than the last. Each shadow stretches longer. Each whisper grows more distinct. And the tower, once a symbol of order, becomes something else, something that observes, something that waits. Even in the quiet streets below, life continues. Children play, markets hum, but the people glance upward, a lingering unease, a sense that what is above sees more than it should. And in the belfry, the shadows shift. They shift with intent, and the bell ringers realize too late that the tower is no longer simply stone and timber. It is presence. It is watchful. It is waiting. The camera drifts slowly over the worn steps of Saint Augustine's bell tower. Moss clings to the edges of stone, slick from a morning rain. Fog drifts through the square below, curling around lampposts and shuttered windows. The tower rises above it all, silent, imposing, and impossibly still. The head bell ringer, an older man with a precise hand and steady breath, had begun his evening ritual as usual. His boots scuffed the stairs, rope creaked under his touch, candles flickered in the belfry, casting long shadows against the stone walls. He was meticulous, devout, faithful in a way that drew admiration and quiet envy alike. Townspeople knew him, trusted him, and for decades, he had never failed. that this night, something was different. He paused mid-step, hand on the rope. The air felt heavier than normal. A faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the tower. Not the bell, something subtler, but something wasn't right. Outside, a dog barked in the square, distant, frightened. A crow lifted from the roof of a nearby house. The town remained mostly quiet, save for the occasional wind rattle through shuttered windows. Inside, the bell ringer climbed. Each step echoed unnaturally. He reached the top landing and glanced into the belfry. The bell sat as always, solid, still, waiting. And that's when he heard it. A scraping sound, soft, irregular, coming from behind the bell. He leaned forward, peering into the shadows. Empty. The rope swayed gently, though he had not touched it. He chalked it up to nerves. Old stairs, drafts. The mind plays tricks at height, but the sensation remained. Something observing. Hours later, he was gone. Villagers discovered it the following morning. The bell tower door was closed, untouched. Candles still smoldered in their holders. The rope hung limp, as if waiting. And then they noticed the footprints. They led up the worn stone stairs, precise, heavy, then vanished. No body, no sign of struggle, just emptiness. A woman who lived across the square remembered seeing him the night before. She had watched from her window as he climbed, but she said something strange. His shadow appeared to move oddly, not in sync with his body, stretched unnaturally along the stone wall, reaching, lingering. Whispers began circulating immediately. Old tales resurfaced, stories of the tower being cursed, of a spirit that claimed those who reached too high. Fathers warned sons, mothers hushed children. A local historian dug through dusty tomes, mentions of disappearances every 50 years, bell ringers, heads of clergy, a pattern forming quietly over centuries. And yet, the town carried on. Markets opened, the church bells rang lower down, smaller chimes. Life went forward, as if the missing man were a mere absence in the rhythm of the day. But among those who had seen the footprints, unease spread, anxiety, a tightening in the chest, nights of poor sleep, eyes straying upward toward the tower. One young apprentice attempted to climb the stairs the following evening. He reported an oppressive weight in the air, a sense of being watched, something cold and patient, something that did not belong to the world below. And that's when he heard it, a whisper, hard to distinguish, not a voice, but language shaped, flowing, then broken, faint, almost imperceptible, yet it carried through the stone, bouncing across walls, filling the narrow stairwell with sound that seemed alive. He descended quickly, heart hammering, breath uneven, hands trembling. Town elders convened. They debated practicalities. Search parties formed. Lanterns swung in the square. As men ascended the tower, dogs sniffed the air. Nothing was found, no trace beyond the vanished footprints. Rumors hardened into fear. Whispers grew louder. Children no longer played near the tower at dusk. Women crossed the street to avoid its shadow. Men avoided climbing, citing illogic and superstition alike. Even the priest journal grows uneasy at this point. He writes, "I fear for him. I fear for us all. The tower watches." The disappearance casts a slow, insidious shadow over the town. Daily routines continue. Shops open, candles are lit, meals are prepared, but everyone notices the subtle changes. Pauses in conversation, the way the wind seems to carry voices, a heaviness in the air near the tower, and the footprints, they remain in memory, etched into the minds of those who saw them, steps that led nowhere. The next bell ringer hesitates each evening, holds the rope longer, listens, looks for movement in corners, shadows that flicker against candlelight. Some swear the tower itself seems different now, less stone, more presence. The walls stretch slightly, the air tastes of iron and cold dust, and for those brave enough to climb, the same sensation recurs. Eyes that feel unseen, weight that presses down from above.
The town whispers of a curse, of a bell tower that claims the faithful, and yet, life continues. The missing man's absence is a quiet terror. The last lines of the priest's journal are stark. We live beneath it, but it does not live beneath us. We are watched. A child peers at the tower from a distance. The fog curls around the spire. His small fingers clutch the railing of a balcony, and the shadow of the tower stretches toward him, longer than the day allows. Something waits above, something that does not forgive, something patient, and the town begins to feel it. The camera glides slowly along the nave of Saint Augustine's church. Candlelight flickers across carved pews. Dust motes float in the air, disturbed by a faint breeze through stained glass windows. The organ hums faintly, a low vibration under the soles of worn shoes. Evening prayers begin as usual. The congregation murmurs in rhythm, voices blending into a soft chorus of devotion. The air smells faintly of incense and old wood. Shadows stretch along stone walls, elongating with each flicker of flame. A young novice kneels near the back. His hands are folded tightly. His eyes dart to the high arches. The sound of the bell tower drifts faintly down, though the rope has not been touched. But something wasn't right. The first note is barely perceptible, half chant, half scream, rising from above. Not the bell, not human, yet shaped like prayer. It shivers through the church like wind through a cracked window. The novice freezes, heart thumping. He listens, and that's when he heard it. From the bell chamber, a voice, or something like a voice, reaches down, long syllables that twist familiar prayers into something else. The cadence is correct, but the tone is wrong, hollow, endless. He rises on unsteady knees, moving toward the rear door. The church is quiet, except for the hum of devotion, yet the sound grows, climbing, pervading, shaping the air itself. The priest notices nothing at first. Candles are lit, incense burns, the organ plays its gentle drone. Devotion continues, but the novice senses it. Shadows lengthen unnaturally along the rafters. Shapes seem to coil at the edges of candlelight. Something occupies the space above, unseen, waiting, observing. The climb to the bell chamber is narrow. The spiral stairs groan under each footfall. Walls press close. The air grows heavier, moist. Smells of stone and decay mingle with the faint scent of smoke from candles below. And then he reaches the top. The chamber is dark. Thick shadows fill the corners. The bell hangs silently. The rope swings gently, though untouched. And there, suspended in darkness, is a figure, not moving as a human would, floating, or perched in a way that defies expectation. The figure chants, a slow, deliberate litany, a song without audience. Words curl into the air, familiar and wrong. The voice rises, echoing against the stone. The novice grips the railing, his knuckles pale, breath shallow. Every instinct screams to flee. He notices details impossible to ignore. Hands clasped in prayer, eyes obscured by shadow, limbs bent unnaturally. The chanting continues, unbroken, unseen. A candle flickers in the corner. The figure sways slightly, synchronized with no rhythm known to the human body. He stumbles backward, nearly falling. The stairs tremble underfoot, heart racing. The first attempt to call the priest goes unheard. When the door opens, only stone and darkness greet him. The sound recedes momentarily, but it does not stop, and the novice realizes he is alone. He descends quickly, feeling the tower shift subtly beneath him. Stone seems colder, heavier, shadows cling. The chant echoes faintly in his mind. Long after the sound has faded, the priest is dismissive when told of the sight. He cites exhaustion, imagination, the overactive mind of a young novice. But the novice knows what he saw, and he knows the sound. It lingers in his memory, a haunting rhythm of devotion twisted. The townspeople notice a change, subtle at first. Evening prayers grow quieter, candles are lit, but fewer in number. People avoid the tower's shadow. Whispered conversations speak of curses, of spirits, of a bell tower that houses something other than stone and rope. The novice records his experience in his journal, careful to detail every movement, every sound, every distortion of light. He writes of the figure suspended in darkness, the chanting that does not cease, the feeling of eyes upon him even as he descends the stairs. And then he adds one final note, short and trembling. It watches, always watching. From below the tower appears unchanged, silent, solemn and stoic against the evening sky. But the novice knows better. Something inhabits the belfry, something patient, something that waits while the faithful pray below, and the town, oblivious, continues its evening devotion.
But in the minds of those who have heard the chant, the shadow of it lingers, a presence in the corners of the eye, a weight in the air. The camera pans upward, the belfry looms, its silhouette sharp against the dying light, and within the figure remains, suspended, chanting, watching, and the novice, trembling in the square, knows the silence of the bell no longer signifies safety, because the voice above will not be silenced. The camera sweeps slowly across the town from the hill above, fog curling around rooftops, the spire of Saint Augustine's tower, cutting sharply into a pale waning sky. Cobblestones glisten with rain, lanterns sway gently in the chill evening air. The historian, bent and careful with age, steps through the church's archive room. Dust hangs in beams of light, leather-bound ledgers creak under his hands. The smell of old parchment and candle wax fills the air. He flips through entries that span centuries, names, dates, brief notations, most mundane, maintenance of the bell, records of donations, minor repairs, and then a pattern emerges. Every 50 years, the records indicate a missing bell ringer, not a few days, not weeks, gone entirely, no cause, no explanation, only a name, a date, and then a blank line, where life should continue. The historian's finger traces the timeline. He counts the gaps, the disappearance in 1650, another in 1700, then 1750, 1800, 1950, but something wasn't right. Each of these events coincides with a lunar alignment. The full moon hung low, reddish in color, a subtle shift in the night sky, noted in old almanacs preserved alongside the church's records. The historian pauses. He sets the ledger down, breathes in the musty air. His eyes lift to the spire above, a silent presence, looming, indifferent. And that's when he heard it. A faint vibration, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat through stone. Not the bell, something older, something that had existed through every cycle, every disappearance. He climbs the spiral stairs to the chamber, careful with each step. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the walls. The stone seems colder, denser, the air thicker with each ascent. At the top, the bell rests as it always has. Rope swings slightly, though untouched. The wind outside whistles faintly through broken mortar. He recalls the accounts of the vanished bell ringers. Each one reported subtle unease in their final days. Dreams of eyes watching from above, shadows moving in corners, faint sounds at night, too precise to be coincidence. And now, with these records in hand, the historian feels the spiral tightening, not of stairs, of fate, of superstition, of dread slowly encircling the community. He returns to the town square below. Lanterns cast golden pools of light, but they feel insufficient. Shadows press into alleys and doorways. Children play hesitantly. Dogs growl at empty corners. The historian visits local families, speaking softly of the pattern he has uncovered. Most shake their heads, dismiss him politely. Coincidence, they say. Old records are mistaken. But in the night, the pattern repeats in whispered form. Conversations hushed by fear. Warnings passed quietly from parent to child. Superstition entwines with faith. Each new bell ringer now carries the weight of a legacy he does not understand. A young apprentice, climbing the tower, pauses mid-stair, feels the air shift. Something presses from above,
Shadows seem to lean toward him. He turns quickly. The rope sways slightly. He freezes, and that's when he hears it. A half-whispered chant, carried down the stone stairwell. Not human, but deliberate. A rhythm that matches no bell he has ever rung. A resonance that seems to acknowledge him. The historian notes it in his journal later, careful with his words. Patterns are not mere coincidence. The past echoes here, and it watches the present, patiently. The townspeople notice small things. Whispers in corridors, shifts in candlelight, shadows moving contrary to reason. They feel the weight of the centuries above, pressing through stone and memory. The tower itself becomes a lens for fear, a monument not only to faith, but to absence, to history repeating, to the vanished. The historian studies the alignment once more. The moon will rise again, in the same pattern, a soft red glow, just above the horizon, and the town braces, not knowing for what exactly. The camera pans slowly upward. The spire cuts a sharp line into the night sky. Inside, the bell sits silent, but the air vibrates faintly. A rhythm, a reminder. Something endures, something remembers. And those who climb the spiral stairs know, in the hollow of their chests, that history is patient. It waits, and the echoes of the past are not quiet. They are near. The camera glides upward, tracing the jagged silhouette of Saint Augustine's tower against a heavy gray sky. Rain-slicked stone gleams faintly. Fog drifts lazily through narrow streets, pooling around lampposts and doorways. The spire dominates the town, an unmoving eye that casts a shadow too dark for the hour. Residents begin to speak quietly, exchanging stories of dreams that chill the chest. Nightmares of stone stretching impossibly tall, of windows that stare like eyes, shadows that move independently, bending toward them in sleep. A young mother wakes abruptly, her palms damp with sweat. She glimpses the tower through her bedroom window. In her dream, it watches. Every night, its spire taller, more imposing. She trembles, unsure if the fear is born of sleep or waking. But something wasn't right. The priest dismisses complaints. Dreams are flights of imagination. Stress, he says. Superstition. Faith demands obedience, not terror. Yet in the bell chamber, the historian notes something previously unseen. Carvings hidden in the stone, faces contorted in eternal scream, hollow eyes, open mouths frozen in wordless terror. Each etched figure seems to leer at anyone who ascends the stairs, watching from within the very walls. The young apprentice who climbs the stairs reports a strange vibration in the air. The bell itself hums faintly, a resonance that is not mechanical, a subtle, sinister pulse that courses through the stone floor and into his feet. And that's when he heard it, a low thrum, slow and deliberate, vibrating against rib and spine. Not the bell swinging, not a rope in motion. Something alive, something patient. Locals begin keeping vigil at night. Windows remain shuttered. Lanterns burn long after midnight. Whispered prayers pass from mouth to mouth. And always in the quiet hours, the tower seems closer. Watching, waiting. A bell ringer ventures inside. The spiral stairs echo beneath his steps. Shadows flicker with each candle flame. The carved faces in the walls seem to shift subtly as he passes. Eyes narrowing, mouths opening slightly. He stops, heart pounding, breath shallow. The bell vibrates again. Not loud, not sharp. A subtle hum that sets teeth on edge, fills the chamber with unplaceable pressure. Footsteps in the square below echo, but the streets are empty. Lanterns sway in unnatural drafts. One night, a child claims the tower whispered her name. She points to a window high above. Her parents dismiss her. Yet the historian present observes the shadows on the wall, and something in the stone shifts, almost imperceptibly, like acknowledgement. The carvings are examined in daylight. Each face is detailed in anguish, teeth bared, eyes wide, the texture of despair captured in stone. Scholars speculate about the masons. Perhaps they were apprentices who died on the project. Perhaps they were warnings. Perhaps the tower remembers. Nightmares spread. Adults dream of being watched while awake. The bell hums on nights with no ringing. Residents report headaches, tightness in the chest, a weight pressing from above. The pattern tightens, a spiral of dread circling the town. A priest climbs the stairs himself, skeptical. Candles flicker, the rope hangs still, and yet, he feels it. The pressure, the pulse, something in the stone, resonating. Watching him, he examines the carvings and feels nausea. Faces not just etched but alive in a sense he cannot articulate. The eyes follow, the mouths breathe. The bell vibrates in sympathy, responding to the rhythm of human fear. But the townspeople below see nothing. Routine continues. Shops open, bells chime elsewhere. Life carries on as if unaware of the weight above. The historian records each observation meticulously. The tower watches. It has always watched. The bell is no longer just a signal. It is a heartbeat. The apprentice retreats, stumbling down the stairs. Shadows twist behind him. The faces in the stone leer closer. The bell trembles, a subtle sinister pulse that seems to acknowledge the fear it inspires. The camera rises again, pulling back to show the tower in full. Its spire dominates the fog. Lanterns glow weakly below. The carved faces remain unseen from the street. And in the chamber, the bell vibrates once more. Slow, deliberate, patient. The tower is awake, and the town, beneath it, begins to feel the weight of its gaze. It watches, always, and the pulse continues. The camera drifts slowly upward along the jagged silhouette of Saint Augustine's tower. Rain-slicked stone glistens faintly under a cold waning light. Mist curls around the spire, weaving through the narrow streets below, pooling around lampposts, doorways, and silent rooftops. The town stretches beneath it, ordinary, quiet, but under the shadow of the tower, unease threads through the air like an invisible current. Inside the bell chamber, the surviving bell ringer grips a small notebook, fingers trembling. Pages are filled with frantic, uneven scrolls, times, dates, half-formed words, the echoes of sounds that should not exist. Breath comes in quick bursts, ragged, heart hammering against ribs, as if trying to escape. He remembers the night. The others vanished. Each step upward along the spiral stairs had been deliberate, careful, reverent, even. The rope under his hands was alive with tension, cold, almost quivering. And as he climbed, the narrow stone walls seemed to press inward, shrinking the space around him, amplifying every footstep, every distant sound. But something wasn't right. A low, almost imperceptible vibration runs through the stone, a subtle thrum that raises gooseflesh on the back of his neck. The spiral stairwell stretches further than memory allows. Shadows flicker oddly along the walls, twisting against the candlelight he carries. Each flicker feels deliberate, almost conscious. And that's when he heard it. A murmur, soft, insistent, not human, but in cadence with the prayers he once knew. Half chant, half whisper, measured and deliberate. It seems to pulse through the very stone, vibrating through his feet, up his spine, into the hollow of his chest. He climbs. Notes drop from his grip, scribbled frantically between steps. Observation, documentation, survival. Every page carries the weight of fear he cannot yet name. The chamber door at the top creaks open, spilling darkness into the
stairwell. Shadows coil in the corners, moving subtly, aware of his presence. Candles flare weakly against the cold stone, yet the darkness beyond absorbs the light, swallowing the edges of the room. He steps inside. The bell hangs silently, but the air vibrates faintly with its unseen resonance. The pulse is slow, deliberate, unyielding, a heartbeat felt rather than heard. and then he sees them. Figures suspended in darkness, a congregation, motionless, yet undeniably alive, limbs stiff, posture rigid, impossible to measure, yet breathing, and they chant, a hollow rhythmic sound, directed not outward, but downward, into the very foundations of the tower. The young bell ringer falters, breath catches, heart hammers like a drum. He steps closer, notes scrawled in haste. They are here, not human, not dead, watching, chanting to something beneath the tower. The shadows at the edges of his vision twist, stretching unnaturally as he moves. Candle flames flicker violently. His mind strains to comprehend. Every instinct screams to flee, but curiosity, terror, and the need to record consume him. The bell hums again, subtle, low. The resonance flows through the floor, the walls, the spiraling stairwell. His hands shake as he touches the stone, feeling its pulse, its awareness. The vibration aligns with the chanting above. He recalls the centuries-old records, the historians' journals, the pattern of vanished bell ringers, lunar cycles, disappearances every 50 years. And now, he is part of it. The spiral continues. He realizes with sudden clarity that the chanting is not random. It is deliberate, purposeful, drawing something from beneath the tower, something patient. He steps toward the center of the chamber. Candlelight reveals details he had not seen before. Faces in shadow, masks of horror, mouths open in silent screams, limbs bent at impossible angles, eyes, where visible, fixed on some unseen point below, unblinking. The bell ringer feels nausea rise, a sour churn of fear and disbelief. He falls to his knees, writing feverishly. They are alive, not human, not yet dead. They call to what sleeps beneath, and I cannot leave. The spiral stairwell below seems impossibly far. Air thickens, suffocating, damp with stone, dust, and an iron scent. A draft moves through the chamber, chilling him, carrying faint whispers, words he cannot place. And then the chanting shifts, faster, louder, still unbroken. The congregation of shadows seems to sway imperceptibly. Their song rises, layered, complex, harmonies that should not exist. A sound designed to penetrate, to awaken, to call. The bell vibrates again, subtly, but insistently, in perfect harmony with the song above. A pulse that resonates through bone and muscle. The bell ringer covers his ears, but it is useless. The vibration carries, deep and unavoidable. He writes in desperation. It watches, it measures. The tower itself is alive. He stumbles back, eyes darting. The edges of the room seem to close in. Shadows stretch, coiling around the walls like living smoke. Candle flames tremble violently. A breath escapes him. He cannot distinguish between fear and awe. His mind races through memories of those who vanished before him. Footsteps that led nowhere, ropes that swung without hands, the bell vibrating in empty air. And now, centuries of pattern converge above and below him. He descends a step, hesitant. A shadow shifts, a hand, a shoulder, the faintest movement, but it is not toward him. The chanting continues, unwavering, inexorable. He hears words, broken, fragmentary, echoing in the stone. Notes fall again. He collects them frantically, heart hammering, breath ragged, eyes wide, watching every shadow, every flicker of candlelight. The camera lingers on the bell. Its surface seems to shimmer faintly in the dim light, vibrating in resonance with the congregation above. He writes, the descent is not downward, it is inward, into fear, into knowledge, into the endless waiting of stone and shadow. The congregation continues, patient, chanting, swaying imperceptibly in darkness. Their rhythm aligns with the pulse of the bell and the tower itself. The camera pans outward, revealing the spire from a distance. Fog curls at its base. Lanterns glow weakly below. Inward, the town remains unaware, ordinary, oblivious. Inside,
The bell vibrates, shadows shift in silence. The bell ringer feels it. The descent has begun, not a fall into darkness, but a spiral into something deeper, into terror, into the awareness that centuries of disappearance, chanting and silent observation converge here, and he is already inside it. The pulse quickens, the shadows lean, the tower waits, the descent continues. The camera drifts slowly across the town at dusk. Fog curls in the streets, lanterns flicker weakly, their light swallowed by the mist. The spire of Saint Augustine's tower pierces the sky, silent, yet impossibly present. Its shadow stretches across rooftops, long and unnatural, as though the stone itself reaches. Inside the church, priests gather in a solemn circle, candles flare in their hands, incense curls upward, and the air smells thick with smoke and wax. Every surface gleams faintly under trembling light. The surviving bell ringer is present, pale, hands shaking, as he recounts the events at the spire. The priests begin an exorcism. Soft Latin intonations ripple through the air, words of authority, prayers against unseen forces. Holy water drips onto the stone floor. The bell remains silent, still, yet a vibration pulses faintly through the chamber. But something wasn't right. The air grows heavier. The candles flicker violently, shadows stretching and twisting along stone walls. A low hum resonates from the tower above, subtle, almost imperceptible, yet impossible to ignore. And that's when he heard it. A tolling bell, silent, not carried by sound, yet felt in the chest, in bone, in sinew. Each stroke sends a pulse through the stone, through the priests, through the faithful who huddle near the altar. The exorcism falters. The priests exchange uneasy glances. No response, no alleviation. The air thickens, oppressive, carrying the faint scent of smoke and incense beyond what the candles themselves produce. Townspeople begin to speak in hushed voices, reports of faint tolling in empty streets, windows trembling with a vibration that has no origin. Children cry softly at night, awakened by a sense of being observed, their small bodies stiff with fear. Some vanish, quietly, doors left open, meals untouched, rooms filled only with the faint lingering of smoke and incense, as if a presence had passed through. Families whisper rumors in hushed tones. The weight of the tower presses on their minds. A priest climbs the tower alone, determined to confront whatever resides there. Candles flicker against cold stone, shadows twist unnaturally. Each step up the spiral stairwell seems to extend time, stretching seconds into minutes. The bell hangs still, yet a subtle vibration pulses through the air. He enters the chamber. Silence is absolute, and yet the air hums with an unplaceable sound, a resonance beneath perception. Candlelight reveals carvings in the stone, contorted faces, mouths frozen in silent screams, eyes staring toward some invisible horizon. The priest attempts the ritual again. Words of exorcism fall heavy in the chamber. Holy water drips across stone. Candles flare, yet the subtle tolling of the bell continues, unbroken, a pulse in perfect rhythm with the silent song of the tower. The townspeople below sense it. Anxiety mounts. Windows shuttered too early, doors bolted in panic. Small gatherings whisper warnings to one another. Children tremble in corners. Dogs howl without cause. Livestock refuses to leave their pens. And then another disappearance occurs. A woman, mid-step in the square, simply gone, no trace left behind. The door to her home stands open. Smoke and incense linger, thick in the air, as though a presence has lingered and departed. The surviving bell ringer records everything. The bell rings even when unmoved. The tower watches, and the people vanish, quietly, one by one. No cause, no sound, no trace, only the weight of the tower above. The priests convene again. Discussion is strained, voices low. The exorcism is repeated, methods intensified. Candles multiply, incense burns thickly. Words of supplication grow louder, more desperate. But the tower does not respond. The vibration of the bell continues, subtle, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. Pressure mounts in the chest, in the head, in the marrow of those present. The town falls into silence, streets emptied of the brave, windows shuttered against unseen eyes, rooms filled with the lingering scent of smoke and incense. Sometimes long after candles have burned out, the surviving bell ringer is found weeping quietly in the corner of the nave. Notes scattered across the stone floor, pages damp with his hands' sweat, words smeared, frantic. He whispers in trembling tones, "It is alive, not sound, not stone. It watches, it calls, and those who hear it vanish." The camera pans upward. The spire of Saint Augustine's tower looms, dark against the night sky. Mist curls around the stone. Lanterns below cast faint glows but cannot penetrate the weight of shadow. The bell vibrates once more, faint, imperceptible, yet felt in the chest, in bone, in memory. The silent mass has begun. The town sleeps uneasily, unaware of the presence lingering above. Shadows coil in corners. The pulse continues. The vanished are not forgotten. They are a warning. And the tower waits, always. The camera lingers on the spire, black against fog and moonlight, silent, patient, unbroken, and inside the bell tolls, not with sound, but with intent. The camera glides slowly over the town at twilight. Fog curls along the cobblestones, wrapping around shuttered windows and empty streets. Lanterns flicker weakly, swallowed by the mist. The spire of Saint Augustine's tower rises above it all, dark and immovable, cutting through the last light of day. The final bell ringer approaches the base of the tower. His hands tremble. His breath comes in shallow bursts. Notes scrawled hastily in a small leather journal are pressed into his coat pocket. He knows what awaits above, knows what vanished before him, knows the tower is watching. He begins the climb. Spiral stairs, worn smooth by centuries of rope and footfall, seem longer tonight. Each step echoes in stone, bouncing back to him with a hollow insistence. Shadows cling to walls. Candlelight flutters, elongating dark shapes that twist with every movement. But something wasn't right. The vibration begins faintly, barely perceptible, a pulse beneath his feet, through the stone. Not the bell but the tower itself, alive, patient, aware. He grips the railing, knuckles white, and continues upward, and that's when he heard it. A low hum, deep in resonance with the bell's metal, though the rope hangs still. A rhythm that sets teeth on edge, a pulse that presses on the chest, on the mind, on the very marrow of fear. At the top, the chamber opens. Candles flicker against carved faces in the stone. Mouths frozen in silent scream. Eyes hollow but aware. Shadows shift subtly. The congregation of darkness, those who vanished before, remain, motionless yet alive, chanting.
The bell trembles above. He reaches out, desperate, and touches the rope. It is heavier than ever, rigid, almost unwilling to move. He pulls. The bell falls, a soundless crash. The air vibrates. The chamber quivers. The tower seems to inhale. The walls press inward. Shadows coil. The bell ringer staggers backward. A hand, or suggestion of one, brushes his shoulder. Shapes twist and turn beyond comprehension. And then the floor shifts beneath him. Stone and air collapse in a slow grinding motion. The tower swallows him. Step by step, he disappears into darkness. The journal tumbles from his grasp. Notes scatter across cold stone. Pages flapping in a silent wind that is not wind. Below, the town feels the absence. Silence reigns. The bell no longer tolls. Windows shuttered in fear now remain closed forever. Shops sit empty. Livestock wanders aimlessly. The streets are filled with an oppressive quiet. Families whisper of the vanished bell ringer, of the tower that swallowed him whole. Faith falters. Prayer feels futile. Rituals lose their meaning. The clergy cannot explain. Their chants echo hollowly against stone, unanswered. Morality decays. The town is fractured. Fear becomes normal. Superstition eclipses faith. Children speak of shadows that linger in corners. Adults glance upward and shiver. Even in sunlight, conversations trail off. Silence fills rooms once alive with life. The historian records it all in grim detail. The bell no longer rings. The tower watches, patient, and those who remain struggle to reconcile with what is above. Faith collapses under its weight. Night spreads, lanterns flicker, mist coils through empty streets. The spire dominates the town, eternal and unbroken. Shadows linger long after any light fades. Inside, the bell chamber is empty, yet the pulse continues, a subtle vibration that travels through stone and bone, a reminder that the tower endures. The bell may fall, the bell ringer may vanish, but the tower remains. The town below begins to rot, spiritually, morally, silently. The people are afraid to live fully, to act, to hope, to pray, and the tower watches, patient, waiting, unmoved. The camera pans outward, fog clings to the rooftops, lanterns glow dimly, windows are dark, the streets are empty, and in the silence the pulse continues, a heartbeat in stone. The collapse is complete, faith has ended, the town has been swallowed in its wake, and the tower waits, always. The camera glides slowly over a landscape of ruins, gray and silent under the pale, waning light. Fog curls through the narrow streets of the abandoned town, pooling in the cracks of cobblestones, clinging to the eaves of rooftops, and swallowing the fractured remains of walls. Chimneys tilt precariously, and the once whitewashed buildings are streaked with moss, their surfaces slick with centuries of rain and decay. The spire of Saint Augustine's tower rises above it all, fractured and blackened, leaning as though burdened with memories too heavy to bear. Windows gape like hollow eyes. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone, rotting timber, and the faint trace of smoke and incense that refuses to dissipate, lingering like a memory etched into the air. Urban explorers approach cautiously, boots click against cracked cobblestones, jackets zipped tight against a chill that rises not from the evening air, but from the ruins themselves. Their breath fogs in the dim light. They carry cameras, notebooks, and flashlights, each step measured, tentative. The silence presses against them, thick and unnatural, as though the town itself is holding its breath. But something wasn't right. A faint echo rises from the tower's depths. It is not a bell, not sound in the usual sense, yet it resonates inside the chest, a vibration felt more than heard, settling into the marrow and bone. The explorers pause, exchanging glances heavy with unease. Notes are whispered, cameras click, capturing shadows that shift unnaturally against stone, and that's when they heard it. A pulse, subtle, insistent, not audible, not measurable by any instrument, yet undeniable. A memory of the tolls long gone, of centuries of vanished bell ringers, vibrating through the ruined air. One of the explorers swallows, lips dry, and adjusts the strap of a backpack, as though the motion could ground him to reality. They step closer to the base of the tower. The stones are slick with moss. Ivy winds around fractured columns. Every surface gleams faintly under the pale lantern light, wet and alive with moisture. Footsteps echo in hollow corridors. Shadows cling to corners, stretching unnaturally, as though aware of the movement. The first explorer kneels, brushing his fingers across a carving near the base of the tower. Faces frozen in eternal scream, mouths agape, eyes staring at some unseen center. The stone is rough, cold, uneven. He feels the contours of the carved eyes press into his palm. A shiver travels up his spine. Notes spill from a pocket. They gather them quickly, hastily. Each scribbled line trembles with the weight of fear, awe, and fascination. They begin the ascent. The spiral stairs are fractured, slippery with moss and rain. Every step echoes in the tower, bouncing off walls as though the stone itself is mocking the sound. Shadows cling, twisting along the walls. Dust and small stones fall with each step. Candlelight from lanterns flickers,
casting ghostly shapes that stretch, bend, and recoil with every movement. A pause, one explorer touches a wall, dust rises in faint clouds, carvings, faces, hands, mouths peer from the stone. The air smells of decay and faint incense. Something unseen brushes against the edge of hearing, a whisper, a half-chanted prayer, a warning carried across centuries. But the bell does not toll, not truly, only the faintest pulse, a vibration beneath the feet, a resonance that presses on bone and chest and mind. Inside the upper chamber, the explorers find the bell, rusted, warped, silent. Candles are arranged in broken clusters, shadows move independently of light. Dust swirls, catching in beams of fading sun. The chamber seems impossibly large, despite measurements suggesting otherwise. The first explorer steps closer to the bell, fingers brush its surface, metal vibrates faintly, almost imperceptibly. Memory made tangible, a pulse beneath the touch. He recoils, feeling it resonate with something ancient, patient, unyielding. The other explorers record it. Cameras hum, microphones pick up faint disturbances, though nothing exists that could produce them. Each frame captures shifting shadows, moments of light, bending around the contours of carved faces. They climb higher. The spire, jagged and broken, dominates the skyline. Mist curls below. The town is a ghost beneath them. Empty streets, shuttered windows, abandoned gardens. Trees lean into the windless fog. Nature has reclaimed what humans abandoned, yet the ruins exude a weight that is not merely structural. Each step upward stretches seconds into minutes. Time is elastic inside the tower. Shadows stretch, bend, fold upon themselves. Candlelight becomes unreliable. Shapes flicker in peripheral vision. Every movement feels observed, measured, anticipated. One explorer pauses, notebook in hand. He scribbles. It is as if the tower remembers. It holds the echoes of the vanished. The pulse remains. Something watches. A door creaks. The upper chamber opens onto fractured stone. Dust floats in beams of light. Carvings line the walls. Faces twisted, mouths frozen, eyes fixed. The explorers step inside, lanterns held high. The air is heavier here, humid with decay, scented faintly with incense and rust. A low, almost imperceptible vibration pulses through the floor. Not a sound, not movement, but the sensation of weight, of presence. They freeze. Heartbeats accelerate. Every shadow seems to twitch, alive. The explorers move cautiously to the center of the chamber. Candlelight flickers across the bell. Rusted metal hangs silent. The pulse continues. It resonates with the memory of centuries of vanished bell ringers, of silent masses, of rituals gone awry. They document everything. One scribbles, some things are not meant to be touched, some sanctities better left alone. Footsteps echo as they descend slowly. Moss and stone make footing uncertain. Shadows follow, lanterns tremble. Every sound is amplified, carried by walls that have absorbed centuries of terror. Outside, the town remains abandoned, overgrown, hushed. Doors sway slightly. Windows gape like empty eyes. Fog curls over empty streets. Silence presses against the explorers like a physical weight. The faint pulse continues, even as they reach the ground, felt more than heard, resonating through bone and memory. They pause at the edge of the ruins. Cameras click, recorders hum, and faintly, almost impossibly, a bell-like echo rises again from the tower. Not sound, but vibration, memory of rhythm, pulse in stone. One explorer whispers, "The bell is gone, the people are gone, the town remains." But the tower waits. It remembers. They retreat. Footsteps echo then fade. Lanterns dim. Mist swallows everything. The camera pans upward, through the fog, past moss-covered rooftops. The spire dominates the skyline. Black against night, fractured and scarred, leaning but unbroken. Shadows linger longer than the light allows. Some towers are never meant to be rung again. Some sanctities are better left untouched. The echoes of history, of vanished lives, of fear and ritual, linger eternally. The bell is silent, the pulse persists, the tower watches, and in that silence, something remains, unseen, patient, waiting. The explorers disappear into the fog, the camera lingers, the tower remains, eternal, a monument to the vanished, a reminder of what should never be disturbed. Time stretches, mist curls, shadows lengthen, and through it all, the faintest echo persists, a bell that no longer tolls, a memory that will not fade. The tower waits, always. Some sacred acts and structures conceal truths too dangerous to uncover.